It's time to talk about all the horror books I want to read for spooky season. This list is very ambitious for me, so I'm also counting it for books I want to read for the remainder of the year. So let's dive into it because we got a lot to discuss. First up is So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This one just came out. I am so excited to read it because I love Rachel Harrison. This story is about a woman who has a birthday coming up that she's dreading, and she is taken out for a weekend getaway with her childhood best friend Naomi, who is kind of a troublemaker. And Naomi sets up a weekend with some strangers, and the night takes an interesting, horrifying turn. And I think we find our lead character turning into a vampire or having vampire urges. I'm sure it will be funny and heartfelt, and I'm so excited to dive into this one, and I love the cover. Next is Ghost Mother, which is about a couple who are expecting their first child together. The husband gets a job and they move to a new location, and they find this decrepit old mansion that the wife becomes obsessed with and wants to renovate. But as they're living there, she learns that there's a series or a murder-suicide that happened there in the 50s, and she starts experiencing strange activity around the house, and she's not sure if what she's experiencing is a haunting or if it's her mental health deteriorating. I think this one sounds really interesting and unique, and I like that it's incorporating the pregnancy into her haunting and how her mind is kind of playing tricks on her. So I'm just very excited to dive in. It sounds like a unique spin on the haunted house story, and I love this cover. Next we have Mary by Nat Cassidy. I've been wanting to read this one for a really long time. I think this is essentially his version or retelling of Carrie. It's about a middle-aged woman who begins experiencing strange visions, and it might be connected to a serial killer, and I think she may start killing people. I'm just excited to dive in. I've heard really great things about this. I read Nat Cassidy's Nestlings last year, and I really loved his writing style, and I'm excited to read about a middle-aged lady because I'm a middle-aged lady. I'm also really looking forward to Nat Cassidy's book Rest Stop, which is hitting shelves October 15th from Shortwave Publishing. This is a novella, I believe. A young musician finds himself locked inside a gas station bathroom in the middle of the night by an unseen assailant. Sounds like a contained, trapped room horror story, and I love those. So I'm very much looking forward to that as well. Then we have Clown in the Cornfield 3. This is the third entry in the Clown in the Cornfield series, and this one, Adam Cesare, the author, described as being a road horror meets folk horror / revenge horror. It sounds a lot different than the first two, so I'm very excited to follow our lead character Quinn from the previous novels and her journey in dealing with the events of the first one and how it's just kind of spiraled from there. So I don't know what the Church of Friendo is. I'm assuming it has something to do with all these people who are kind of worshiping this killer. I'm hoping it's bloody and violent, and I just love this series. I think it's so fun, and I love Friendo. Next is Here Lies a Vengeful Bitch by Codie Crowley, and this one sounds so fun. It sounds like a mashup of Jennifer's Body meets Heather's meets Lisa Frankenstein. It's about a young girl who dies, and she crawls back from the grave to figure out who killed her. And this character, she was a bitch, so she has a lot of enemies, including her ex-boyfriend. So she essentially is going through all of these characters and trying to figure out which one is responsible for her death. It sounds really fun and also dark for a YA story, and I love this cover. And Codie Crowley is on TikTok, and I love her whole vibe and aesthetic. She lives in Salem. She works at this place called Nocturne, which is a beautiful witchy shop. And I'm just very excited for her. She's really cool, so I'm excited to read this. Seems like the perfect season. I think it takes place during Halloween season. Next, we have I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. So this is set in the summer, and it follows two friends in a Texas town who I believe they start killing people. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that right, but I know that there's deaths happening in this small town, and these two friends are kind of at the center of it. And I believe this is Stephen Graham Jones kind of examining the slasher genre. It sounds very meta and fun, and I feel like I have to be in the right mindset to read Stephen Graham Jones because his writing is kind of like stream of consciousness from what I've read, but I've really enjoyed it when I actually set time aside to read his stuff, and this one just sounds so fun. And I love just his knowledge of the slasher genre in general, so I'm sure it will be sprinkled with all of those fun little tropes and interesting tidbits about the genre. Then we have this book, The Blair Witch, The Secret Confession of Rustin Parr. So this is about the guy who killed all these children that I believe they mention in The Blair Witch. It's kind of fuzzy to me, but it's basically pre-Blair Witch movie. I don't know. It sounds really cool. I found this at Savers just randomly on a shelf and I was like, holy shit, I didn't know this existed. It's filled with creepy images as well, cool stuff. So I think there's journal entries in here as well. So I'm hoping to get a lot more backstory to the Blair Witch, and it just looks creepy. Next is Never Whistle at Night, which is a collection of indigenous horror stories. I heard about this on TikTok and it just sounds really interesting. It features several indigenous authors. It has an introduction by Stephen Graham Jones, and some of the stories range from ghost stories, creature stories, family horror stories, and I'm just really excited to get the indigenous perspective because I feel like they have a lot of cultural creepy shit that happens. I'm excited to check some of these out and give short stories a chance, because I feel like anthologies are kind of tough for me, but they are quick, usually quicker to read, so I'm excited to dive into this one at some point. Next we have The Night Guest, which is such a beautiful book. I actually stumbled upon this in Barnes & Noble randomly and I was like, what is this? It sounds so good. So this is about a woman who is experiencing kind of just constant fatigue. She's not herself and the doctors keep telling her she just needs to get some sleep. And then one night she wakes up having walked like 4,000 miles away and she doesn't know how she got there. So things start spiraling from there and she realized there's something bigger going on. I think this one sounds like a really interesting psychological horror with some humor sprinkled in. No one believes this woman who is going through these horrible things and everybody just keeps brushing it off, which I think is very much commentary on how women are treated when they go to the doctors or speak about anything, really. So I'm just excited to dive into this one, especially because the chapters are so short, so I feel like it will be a very quick read. It Came From the Trees is another book I've been dying to read. This is about a group of Girl Scouts that are on a trip in the woods, and I think they encounter Bigfoot. That's all you gotta say. Bigfoot. Love it. I want some Bigfoot horror in my life right now. So next I found Zombie by Joyce Carroll Oates at the thrift store, and I've seen this recommended as a disturbing book on a disturbing books list. I think this is about a serial killer, so that's all I know, and I'm very excited to eventually read this too if I'm in the dark, disturbing mood. And lastly, I found Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. This is a classic murder mystery about a group of people at a Halloween party. Somebody must die. That's, I mean, it's a Halloween party. She writes murder mysteries. I think every one of her stories is pretty formulaic. So, I don't know, but I love the cover. I love the book. It's missing the jacket, but the book itself, very Halloween-y. I know that this list is gonna change, it's gonna grow, and there's so many horror books coming out that I want to read. So, this is what I'm hoping to read, but it is very ambitious of me, especially because I've just started school to become a librarian, and it is a lot of work. It's a lot of reading, so I haven't had a lot of free time to actually read. So whatever I can get in, I can get in. So these are my hopefuls. So pray for me that I'll be able to complete this semester and also still enjoy myself, because it's hard, guys. It's hard. Let me know what books you are planning to read this spooky season. If you plan to read any of these books that I mentioned. I hope you are having an amazing spooky season, and thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Bye.